I'm Jenny, as Caroline said. I'm the Fieldwork Research Manager for HWDT. I am really excited that I get to talk to you about 20 years of Silurian, what's been happening, what's hopefully to come in the future, and some of the highlights of the last 20 years. So if you're here, I'm assuming that you do know HWDT, but just in case we've got any new faces hoping to get involved, the Hebridean Whale and Dolphin Trust, or HWDT, is a charity based on the Isle of Mull in the Hebrides, so that's the west coast of Scotland. HWDT have been conducting a programme of long-term species monitoring and cetacean research on the west coast of Scotland for over 25 years. And all of our long-term research and monitoring depends on public participation, which is one of my favourite things about HWDT. The programme that I'm going to focus on today is obviously our boat-based monitoring from Silurian. And each year, HWDT run dedicated research expeditions on board our vessel Silurian that anyone can join. This year, our 1000th volunteer joined us on board. So yeah, lots to talk about from the past 20 years. Here she is. This is our beautiful Silurian. From Silurian, we collect data of international importance on cetaceans in our waters, but we also monitor threats and detect changes in their behaviour of the animals that we see and detect changes in populations over time. Silurian's had quite a checkered past. She was built in the 1980s in Seattle. After that, she was impounded for drug smuggling in the Caribbean. Following that, she was used for filming flying fish in the Azores for BBC Blue Planet #1, before she finally found a home with us at HWDT. And since then, 20 years of monitoring whales, dolphins and porpoises on the west coast of Scotland. So HWDT have had her since 2002, and during that time we have been following the exact same scientific protocol. So that means that we have the largest data set of its kind in the UK, and because we've been collecting the data in the exact same way every single year, that data is comparable across all 20 years. She's a perfect platform for us because she's very stable, she's wide, comfortable, she's very heavy, and so she offers a great vantage point from which to look for marine animals. So this is our research area, the Hebrides, for those of you that don't know, on the west coast of Scotland, and our research area covers from Cape Wrath in the north, down to Mull of Kintyre in the south, and as far west as the Flannan Isles. As you can see from our tracks here, we used to go out as far as St Kilda. Unfortunately, we've now changed that because we were kind of repeating the same track, and it wasn't getting us valuable data. So now we go as far west as the Flannan Isles, which is just a bit further north of St Kilda. This area, the reason that we are here is because it is a globally important area for marine mammals and basking sharks. Across the area, we carry out randomized straight line transects, and on those transects, we collect 3 different types of data. So we generally go out, our main survey season is between April and October, although since 2018, we have been conducting winter surveys as well. So hopefully some of you are local to Mull and you've been out on some winter surveys with Hannah in January and February. I'm about to go out on one in March, so hopefully we've got some nice weather coming finally in March, so it's a good survey for us then. The key to this is that absolutely anyone can join us on board Silurian. We cannot run these surveys without the help of 6 volunteers who we train to be marine mammal scientists. As I say, we've had over 1,000 volunteers now join us on board. I'm sure that if you chatted to most of them, they would encourage anyone else to join as well. We sail around the west coast for 7 to 12 days at a time, collecting this valuable data and monitoring the occurrence of marine mammals. Our trips are really weather dependent. We are trying to do randomized transects as much as possible. However, we can't obviously plan these trips in advance. Depending on the way the wind is going and the state of the sea is how we plan our trips, which I think makes it really exciting because you never know where you're going to get to. And it means that we also anchor up overnight in these beautiful anchorages that often you can only access by sail, and you might not have the opportunity to get to many of these places any other way. I should say as well that we also run trips for teenagers and young people, particularly young carers as well. There's loads more information about those trips on our website, or if you've got any more questions, feel free to ask at the end. So the types of surveying that we do, we conduct 3 different types of visual line transects. The first of which is visual line transects, where people stand at the mast just like this and visually spot for marine mammals. We're also collecting data on static fishing gear and also rubbish. So people stand at the bow and they have a quadrant that they monitor. We also do acoustic line transects. So we tow a hydrophone, which is a series of underwater microphones. And these are able to detect marine mammal echolocation and communication clicks and whistles and moans, as well as recording the general underwater soundscape and allowing us to monitor anthropogenic sounds as well. We also collect photo identification data, so that's images of some certain species. So we collect photo ID images for minke whales, humpback whales, killer whales, bottlenose dolphins, rissose dolphins, and white-beaked dolphins. But why do we do all this? Why is it so important that we collect this data? So our cetacean monitoring research program has generated this massive long-term effort-corrected data set on the cetaceans of the west coast of Scotland for the last 20 years. And from this, we can estimate population size and distribution. We can assess site fidelity, habitat preference, changes in behavior across our research area. We also monitor and identify threats to these species, which a lot of our research is now looking into anthropogenic noise, for example, which I'll talk to you a little bit about later on. Also the presence of static fishing gear that may increase the risk of entanglement as well. All of our monitoring underpins and informs actions to protect whales and dolphins in Scotland by ensuring that it gets to the right policymakers and statutory nature conservation bodies. We are giving all of this information to the decision makers to ensure that it hopefully makes a real impact for the protections in Scottish waters of whales, dolphins, and porpoises. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of some of where our data has been used and how it has really informed conservation. But just in the last couple of years, this is where some of our data has gone to. HWDT data are currently feeding into 7 PhDs looking at a range of topics. So that is covering things like cumulative impacts on cetaceans, entanglement risk, minke whale behavior, humpback whale distribution, and several of our data sets are being used by several researchers hoping to improve the acoustic identification of species that can be recorded in the Northeast Atlantic. So that's generating automated detectors, and they need data to train those detectors on. So hopefully that shall come to fruition in the next couple of years. HWDT are also one of the founding partners of the Scottish Entanglement Alliance, which aims to better understand marine animal entanglement in Scottish waters. And again, I'll touch on the SEA project in a minute. We now contribute all of our data to the JNCC Joint Cetacean Data Programme, which launched last year. And this is to ensure that all of our data is accessible, and HWDT has been on the steering group for that project since its inception. So it's really great to see it finally come to fruition. As we celebrate our 20th year, we have a massive amount of data, and every single data point has been collected by our volunteer citizen scientists that join us on board. So as I say, in 2022, our 1,000th volunteer joined us. So thank you so much to all those that have joined us and collected data. We really couldn't do it without you. From Silurian, we've surveyed 130,000 kilometres of Hebridean seas, which is roughly the equivalent of sailing 3.5 times around the world. We've gathered more than 9,000 hours of underwater recordings, which again is the equivalent to continuously listening to Spotify for a year, which I just about do. We've recorded more than 16 species, so 16 cetacean species, and one of our databases has more than 5 million rows of data, which I can tell you this winter has been lots of fun to play with. And our databases are only growing. Every survey adds thousands more rows of data and hundreds more gigabytes of recordings and photographs. And our monitoring programs are expanding and generating more and more data every year. We're trying to collaborate with more researchers and collect more data and think of innovative ways that we can use Silurian, our wonderful platform. So that's a little overview for you, but in the last 20 years, what have we found and how has that data been kind of used practically to inform conservation? One of the main priorities for our data collection is long-term harbour porpoise monitoring. This is because sightings for this very inconspicuous species, they drop really rapidly with sea state. So that means they're just really difficult to spot in anything that's above really a sea state 3, I would say, at any distance. As porpoises surface very quickly and they're very small, you can very easily lose them in the waves. However, acoustic monitoring provides an effective method for detecting porpoises, and we can conduct acoustic monitoring in all sea states on HWDT. As a research vessel Silurian, we can tow our hydrophone anytime that we're out sailing. And this also allows for unbiased estimates of absolute abundance for harbour porpoises. So just to give you an example, you can see here on the right is detections per unit effort. So that's the acoustic data, compared to on the left is sightings per unit effort. This is just a single year's worth of data from 2017 that I've got here. But it really demonstrates the value of the acoustic data collection for the species, because you can see that there are many more detections of porpoises in our acoustic data than there are in our visual data. We're really missing a large number of animals through visual sightings alone. So the robust acoustic data collected by HWDT demonstrated that the west coast of Scotland is an important habitat for harbour porpoise and provided much of the evidence needed to designate Scotland's only special area of conservation for the species back in 2019. And ongoing monitoring within and out with the special area of conservation continues on board Silurian. And we report the findings of this every year to our primary funder, NatureScot. And that in turn is fed through into their monitoring strategies for the species. So here are some results from 2021, showing where the harbour porpoises were acoustically detected, and the hashed box there is the SAC. I'm working on this currently for the 2022 data, and hopefully should have that on the website if anyone's interested ahead of the coming season in that's April 1st, which is rapidly approaching. So the next kind of case study I've got for you is common dolphins. Despite their name, before the early 2000s, this species really was a rare sight in the Hebrides. It's only since 2005 that there's been a marked increase in their numbers. And in the last few years, common dolphins have been recorded in record-breaking numbers from Silurian in particular, not just visual sightings, but also acoustic recordings of them as well. We've really seen unprecedented numbers. Prior to kind of 2005, common dolphins were really thought to be a summer visitor to these waters. And it's actually our whale track community sightings have shown us that since 2014, common dolphins have been reported every month of the year. And we now know that there are certain groups of common dolphins which do remain in the area all year round. Particularly, there's a group off Ullapool and Summer Isles, one of the most beautiful spots in the world, I think, and a really great place to see common dolphins as you come out of Ullapool on the ferry towards Stornoway. We're not quite sure why we are seeing this kind of marked increase in common dolphins. What we do know is that there has been a 0.5 degree increase in sea temperatures in the area every decade. So in the last 20 years, the waters have warmed by a degree. Now, that might not sound like much, but that's going to have an impact on the whole food chain, and will likely shift prey species, and have a shift on, common dolphins, potentially why they're heading northwards, it looks like. So watch this space as we kind of delve more into the data and as we collect more. My third little case study of how our data has been used is I think really exciting and all kind of came to the fold last year. A joint effort from researchers from and citizen scientists as well, actually, in Scotland and Norway found results in 2021 of our mystery pod of killer whales. So this was a pod that had been recorded by Becky. She was on board. She's the previous science officer. Of Fatasay, they had this mystery pod of killer whales that they couldn't identify from the catalogue. And at that time, Becky got in touch with researchers from lots of different organisations to try and identify who they were, but they weren't recorded anywhere. And then that's kind of where those individuals were left. Then in 2021, a member of the public took some photographs of killer whales in Norway and passed it on to Norwegian Orca Survey to try and identify which individuals they were. There were 3 individuals in the catalogue that were very easy to recognise. They had nicks and notches in their dorsal fin. And Eve from Norwegian Orca Survey immediately recognised that the saddle patches of these individuals were quite different than the killer whales that they usually found in Norway. So she started looking a bit further afield and managed to match the 3 killer whales from that pod to the Scottish killer whale catalogue. So researchers both at HWDT and also our colleagues at the Scottish killer whale catalogue subsequently confirmed that the 3 of the killer whales from the Norwegian encounter were, in fact, these specific individuals known in the Scottish catalogue. But their only previous confirmed sighting was this encounter from HWDT's research vessel Silurian back in 2018. They were seen at about a distance of 300 meters. I actually believe that they kind of snuck up on the volunteers that were sat on the deck at the time in the relay position and were sighted very, very close to the vessel before appearing a bit further away. It also, I heard, was a particularly difficult day. It was very, very lumpy, very, very windy. And so amazing killer whale sighting was exactly what they needed at the time. And it was Becky that took these photographs that allowed this bit of increase in understanding to happen. Without these photos from Silurian and without the photos from this member of the public, we would not have known that there was any overlap between Scottish and Norwegian killer whales. And of course, we can't talk about killer whales on the west coast of Scotland without mentioning the West Coast community. From the early 2000s, HWDT have been monitoring the West Coast community killer whales. For those that don't know, they're a resident pod of killer whales on the west coast of Scotland. They're a highly mobile and wide-ranging species, population, not species. So they've been seen more recently, actually, as far south as the English Channel and Cornwall, but they spend a huge amount of time in the Hebrides and on the west coast of Ireland as well. They've also been recorded in the last 12 months over on the east side of Scotland as well, in the Moray Firth. They're a really special group. They are some of the largest killer whales in the world, and they are marine mammal eaters. So they predominantly feed on porpoises, of which there are lots of in the Hebrides, which is one of the reasons it's a great spot for them. Most of the photographs that we have of the West Coast community have come from members of our whaling community and through Whale Track. However, over the past 20 years, we have had 23 encounters with the West Coast community from our research vessel Silurian. And HWDT identified 8 individuals in the population. There were initially 10, however, 2 of them have confirmed deceased. So 8 of them that frequented the area. However, in the last 6 years, only 2 individuals have been seen. So the very famous Jonco and Aquarius. These buoys are really well documented by the community and have also been recorded from Silurian. Hannah, one of our science officers last year, was really lucky and she got to see them twice from Silurian. Sadly, it looks as though this unique population of killer whales might not be in our waters for that many more years. We know that these buoys are getting towards the end of their life. So with that said, it's really important that we learn as much about this population as we can while we have the chance, really. This year, I'm really hopeful that we get to encounter them from Silurian so that we can hopefully record some of their vocalizations. As someone that's got a passion for marine acoustics, I would love to be able to record the calls of these guys and see how they differ from other killer whale populations or are similar, and see if we can pick out their vocalizations in other data sets that we've got. So again, watch this space, lots of exciting things happening. Another case study of where Silurian data has been used is Minke whale monitoring. So Minke whales are approximately the weight of an African elephant, but they're actually the smallest of the world's baleen whales. And we get an influx of Minke whales. Approximately 10,000 Minke whales travel north each year to come and gorge themselves on our really productive waters that we've got up here. A chunk of those 10,000 minkies that are traveling north will come to the Hebrides and hang out here because it is so rich and we have so much food for them. We have a photo ID catalogue. We take photographs of any minke whales that we see so that we can try and look for identifying marks, nicks, notches, scars, primarily in the dorsal fin, but also elsewhere on the animal, to see if we can recognise individuals year on year. And we have a catalogue with 256 individuals. I should have updated that on the slide. It's just been updated recently. So since 1994, people have been sending their photographs into us of minke whales, and that has resulted in this catalogue. We've got an update of the catalogue coming out in the next, hopefully in the next couple of months. We'll definitely put out a press release when that comes out, and hopefully we'll be able to actively match some minke whales from Silurian this year. So the images in the catalogue have come from members of the community, but also from Silurian as well. One of our really distinctive minkies, Nobble, has returned to the same spot within about 3 nautical miles every single year for a decade now, and he's been recorded for much longer than that. Photo ID can help us estimate population size, abundance, habitat use, and behaviour as well. And HWDT's data has been vital in demonstrating that the Hebrides really are a globally important area for minke whales, because we know that we have a number of individuals that are coming back year on year, have very strong site fidelity. And yeah, we just need to make sure that we're protecting these waters, because it is an important time. Once they've migrated north, they need to be able to have that space to consume their food. Following HWDT's data collection, there was the designation of 4 new marine protected areas in Scotland. HWDT data fed into 2 of these MPAs. You can see there, sorry, it's quite small in the picture, but the Sea of the Hebrides MPA was designated for minke whales and basking sharks. And the Northeast Lewis MPA was designated for Risso's dolphins. HWDT's data was really used to designate, well, to kind of find the boundary of that MPA, and yeah, prove that this really is an important area for minke whales. So we were a key data provider on this project in partnership with lots of other organisations. This really is the start though. The marine protected areas don't currently have any management measures in place. It took a number of years for these MPAs to be designated. Once they were proposed by HWDT, I think back in 2014, and they were designated in 2020. So we're doing a lot of work now on policy through Scottish Environment Link and with our partners at NatureScot as well, to try and inform management measures that are going to be positive and effectively conserve the habitat, as well as the minke whales and the basking sharks in these areas. While I'm talking about MPAs, I'll just digress slightly in that there is currently a consultation open through the Scottish Government website. It's on Scottish highly protected marine areas, which are potentially a new thing that's going to come in. So Scottish highly protected areas, through the Butte House Agreement, which is new, Scottish ministers have committed to designate at least 10% of Scotland's sea as highly protected marine areas by 2026. So the idea is that they will have high level protections by placing strict limits on some human activities such as fishing and aquaculture, while allowing non-damaging recreational activities to take place at carefully carefully managed levels. It's really important when the Scottish Government allows you to have your say that you do, and it's important that everyone is able to respond to this from all sides of the table, so that the conservation measures that come into place have factored in everything. So I would really encourage you, if you're interested, please pop onto the website and submit a response about your thoughts on the highly protected marine areas. HWDT will be submitting a response as an organisation and in collaboration with our science committee as well. And that closes on the 20th of March. So you've got a little bit of time, but not too much time. Back to minke whales, other things that we found in the last 20 years. HWDT are part of the Scottish Entanglement Alliance. As I said, we were one of the founding partners. The partnership is between other NGOs, research organisations, and the Scottish Creel Fishermen's Federation as well. And the project aims to assess the scale and impact of cetacean entanglement in Scotland. So it really is a multidisciplinary project with studies that collate and assess all of the available resources on whale entanglements in Scotland. So interviewing fishers, assessing the stranded animals and the rate of mortality, but also looking at live animals as well. So HWDT data has been used to go through all of our photo holdings. Lauren spent many months going through all of our photo ID data to look for signs of entanglement in our live minke whale recordings. And of the 256 animals that she assessed, 22.3% of them had signs of entanglement scarring. HWDT data was also used to do some risk mapping. So from Silurian, we collect creel data. Every time we see a creel, we have to pair them up. If you've been on board, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes it can be quite difficult. To create risk maps of where there are high incidence of creel fisheries, and therefore where minke whales, for example, are more likely to become entangled. And the C report, the Scottish Entanglement Alliance report, was published last year by Nature Scot, and it's available to read. You can get it on our website, or if you pop onto the Scottish Entanglement Alliance website as well. There's interesting projects just about to start. WDC are about to start a new project trialing different types of creels following on from this Entanglement Alliance body of work. So hopefully there will be real conservation implications from this massive amount of work all these organisations have done together. I'll leave you on one last example of how joining us on board Silurian and all the people that have already joined us has really helped. This is work that's ongoing using our long-term acoustic data. It's looking to assess the prevalence and impact of acoustic deterrent devices, and it's a bit of work that I'm working on right now. So acoustic deterrent devices, on the west coast of Scotland, there are an increasing number of fish farms, and acoustic deterrent devices, or seal scarers as they're also known, are used by fish farms to protect against damage caused by seals. So seals generally are attracted to the nets because they want to get to the salmon. And in the process, they can damage the net and release the salmon. ADDs are powerful acoustic deterrents that emit an intense and aversive noise into the sea, intended to scare away seals. They haven't necessarily been proved to work, and harbour porpoises' sensitivity to underwater noise and their high energetic requirements make them particularly susceptible to disturbance by the ADDs. Until last year, the use of ADDs was largely unregulated in Scotland, and the onus was really on the fish farm companies to monitor and regulate themselves, which was not particularly effective. Using data from HWDT's listening stations, which are gathered on board Silurian, researchers from SAMS, the Scottish Association for Marine Science, have demonstrated that ADDs are a significant and chronic source of underwater noise on the Scottish west coast, and that both the number and geographic range of ADD use has substantially increased over the past decade. They also found actually whole channels of the Hebrides that were completely insonified by ADD noise. So there were patches where there are so many fish farms in a designated area that an animal couldn't pass all the way through without coming into contact with an ADD. Since this research was conducted, the fish farming industry have committed to not using damaging ADDs on their farms and have voluntarily switched them off. This was in response to public concerns regarding noise pollution and the impacts on cetaceans. Even though they'd voluntarily switched them off, we were still recording some ADDs on our listening stations. However, following a change in policy by Marine Scotland in November 2021, 2022 was the first year that we have not recorded any ADDs on our listening stations from Silurian. So that doesn't necessarily mean that there were no active ADDs, but it does mean that we didn't record any. And that is quite a good proxy for their use. So I'm actually working on this right now. I'm doing some data analysis to look back through our data to make sure we haven't missed any ADDs, and to look at how effective this policy change could be in reducing disturbance to particularly porpoises, but all species of marine mammal. Since this policy change, what has to happen now is that the fish farms have to apply for a license to run the ADDs. As part of that license, they have to demonstrate that they're not going to cause any disturbance or they can cause disturbance to less than one marine mammal, is what it says. We are aware that 6 fish farms on the West Coast have applied for the license, and so far they've all been declined. So again, watch this space, but right now it's looking like ADD use will be much, much more limited going forward. So that was a few examples of how the data collected from Silurian is having real conservation implications for the Hebrides. And during the time that Silurian has been working really, really hard, we've had 17,000 sightings of 50,000 individuals. And that's of 16 cetacean species, but the 16 species doesn't include things like basking sharks. Becky and Charlie and Emma were super lucky in 2020 and saw a leatherback turtle just off Canna, which was amazing. We've had countless sightings of sunfish. And in the recent years, we've also had increasing number of sightings of bluefin tuna as well. Always exciting to see. None of our vital data collection would be possible without the people who join us on board. And in that time, we've had some incredible volunteer highlights over the years. In 2020, we even had an engagement on board. I believe I'm right in saying that's the first one we've had. We've had thousands of games of competitive Pass the Pigs, some incredible food cooked by all the volunteers, lots of very chilly sea swims, and some incredible sightings. And maybe people at the end can share their favourite Silurian memories, when we have a bit of a discussion in just a minute. So thank you so much for joining us. And as part of the crew, it is so much fun, and it's amazing that we get to meet so many incredible people that are so passionate about marine conservation and getting involved. If you haven't been on board and you're in 2 minds in whether to join us on board, then the feedback from 2022 really speaks for itself. And I'm sure there are people on this call that I'd love to chat your ear off about it. I've got a little video to hopefully give you a little taste of what a Silurian trip looks like. So hopefully it'll play. Here we go. So I wanted to end on some of the exciting projects that we've got coming up. So I'm currently conducting a review of all of our acoustic data over the past 20 years and making sure that all of our harbour porpoise markup are up to date. So far, we have well over 20,000 harbour porpoise detections in our acoustic data, so it'd be great to add in 2022 to that. I'm going to produce a summary of that before the start of the next season, so before April 1st again, and that'll be available on the website for anyone that's interested. I'm also then working on another project called the Creeling for Sound project, and this is building on Becky and Lauren's work with some of our new sound traps that we've got. And the project is testing whether we can use sound traps mounted in active creels as an effective way to detect cetacean clicks and also anthropogenic sounds. So if this method works, it would be a really easy and cheap way to collect a massive amount of data without having to charter a research vessel or kind of add any new behaviors at all. We can put them in active creels that are already being laid. I'm actually doing the first deployment of that on Friday this week. So hopefully next week I will have some exciting data to look at and we'll know a little bit more about the methodology. Other exciting things that are going to happen this year is we're developing a new methodology for using our new porpoise detector. That's this bright orange piece of kit that's on the slide. The idea with this is that we'll be able to collect calibrated recordings of anthropogenic sounds, so particularly sonar, ADDs, but also high quality calibrated recordings of marine mammals. So for example, if we do encounter the West Coast community, we could drop in our porpoise detector and then sail away and get some, really high quality recordings. And then finally, Charlie, our boat manager, is working really hard at the minute, doing some very heavy duty winter maintenance on Silurian. So hopefully if you've been on before and you come back again this year, you'll be able to notice the difference and that she's had a bit of love and care put into her. I also just wanted to say thank you so much of you to those of you that have donated to our Silurian wish list for her birthday back in December. We really appreciate your support, and I'm particularly excited about our new swim ladder. It means that I can do lots of swimming this year and dipping without having to do my horrible seal impression while I get out or be like hauled back out by Bruce and Charlie. So thank you so much, Karen, for donating the swim platform, the swim ladder. I can't wait to use it and can't wait to get back out sailing with everyone. So thank you very much. Thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate you joining to come and learn a little bit more about where our data goes to.